All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our second welcome webinar. My name is DePaul Straub. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm the Assistant Director here in the Office of New Student and Transition Services at Mines. And I'm really excited to be kind of leading this welcome webinar series this summer. Today, we are very lucky. We have our panel specifically for families and supporters with some of our current lead peer mentors. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in. I've got a few questions prepared for them. One thing I do want to make sure I mention, if you click that nice little like toolbar in Zoom, you should see that Q&A option pop up. If you see that, you can submit questions that you want to know from our students kind of throughout the webinar. Please know that if it's not immediately responded to, we do see it. We have a couple of our staff members that are in the back end kind of tracking that. And we will save some time at the end to make sure that we're answering your questions and you all can hear from our students as well. So we're going to um, start with some of our questions that we like pre-prepared for students, and then we will open up to your questions. But feel free to go ahead and submit those questions anytime through that Q&A feature. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and let our students introduce themselves. So I will hand it over to Liam.
Hi, everyone. My name is Liam Hallinan. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm a senior studying quantitative biosciences and engineering with minors in public affairs, data science, and biomedical engineering. I'm originally from San Clemente, California, and super excited to hear all the questions you have today.
Hi everyone, I'm Lexi Johnson. I use she, her pronouns. I am going into my junior year in chemical engineering, and my hometown is Cheyenne, Wyoming. Super excited you guys are all here.
Everyone, my name is Roman Menina. I am a junior in quantitative biosciences and engineering. I'm also trying to get a minor in data science and biomedical engineering, but not public affairs like Liam. Um, and I am from Arvada, Colorado.
All right. Hello, everyone. I hope y'all's day is going well. My name is Dominic Sands. I'm a senior studying chemical engineering, and I'm from Dallas, Texas.
Awesome. Thanks, y'all. Thank you again for being here today. Our lead peer mentors are the best, but they work with our office to help plan all of the orientation programs that your student will experience in their time at Mines. And so they are definitely an integral part of our office, but also are just great representatives of the student experience here at Mines as well. So I'm looking forward to getting to hear a little bit about their experience today. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and jump right on into our first question. So we're going to start off with kind of a more general one, but if you all could just tell us a little bit about what your first year at Mines was like.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'd say my first year was pretty similar to, everyone else's, like equal parts, exciting and very nerve-wracking. Coming from Dallas, I didn't know anyone at mine, so I was having a completely fresh start. So that was a little terrifying, to be honest, but it was also such a great opportunity. I got to be, I didn't have to carry anything over from high school. I got a completely blank slate, and I got to meet so many incredible people that genuinely changed my life for the better. The first year was a lot of learning for me. What it was like to kind of be on my own, be so far from home. But I learned that I really love independence and I love, just the mind's experience in general. And I loved learning about myself and what I was studying. So it was all just a really, a really reinforcing experience, a very positive reinforcement for my decision to come to Mines.
I can go next. For me, my first year was great. I'm actually from Colorado. I'm from 15 minutes away from mine, so it didn't feel like that big of a switch up, which was a little bit interesting to get used to it at first because like I wanted to feel independent. But I found that I had a really great time. I got really lucky with a really great roommate. So at first, the first semester, my biggest focus was trying to figure out how to be organized. I really struggled with organization. But something that really helped me was kind of getting things onto paper, putting things down that I needed to do. And so that was something that really helped me. I kind of was learning how to be successful in such a rigorous environment. But then the second semester, I started making really good friends. I had a lot of cool groups that I would study with, and I found that that really boosted my experience and made it a lot better, made school less stressful and a little bit easier. So it's kind of learning how to branch out and make those friends other than the people I already knew from Colorado. And so that was kind of what I went through my first year.
I would say that I had a very similar experience to kind of what Dom was describing. I was very nervous coming here. I didn't know anybody, but it really ended up being such an amazing experience. Again, I found like my community that really made me feel like Mines was my home. And it's definitely an experience I wouldn't trade for anything. If I could go back and do it again, I would do it exactly the same. And it was just a great experience for me overall.
Yeah, and kind of just to round things out there, I also had a great time my first year. But I'll be fully honest, at points I didn't know if Mines was the right place for me. And I kind of struggled a little bit with like finding my community at first. But I think I just attribute that to being a little bit more on the introverted side. So once I was able to kind of make some more friends and connections across campus and branch out a little bit more, things became a little bit easier for me. I was able to kind of fit in and find my people and really, really make Mines my home.
Awesome. Thank you all. All right, moving to our next question. So obviously, sometimes as students, you all have things that come up, whether that is struggles or just needing, some campus services or additional support. So our question for you is going to be, what resources do you all feel like you have utilized the most on campus?
You can go ahead. So it's not a resource I've used like every single day, but definitely one that was very beneficial for me was the financial aid office. This Going to college was the first time that I was kind of financially on my own, kind of figuring all that out. And I found that the aid office was super helpful with everything, just figuring out my finances and also helpful with all the scholarships I had. So although it's not something I use every day or even every week, it was definitely something that made me feel a lot more comfortable on campus and figuring everything out.
I think a resource I found very helpful was office hours. I think that's something that you'll probably hear a lot, and your students will hear a lot. But it really does make a difference if you go and make a like develop a relationship with a teacher, especially in your first year. Often coming from high school, you're used to teachers being very focused on your experience and how the student is doing. But as you get to college, there's just too many people, and they're focused on their research or other things. So if you really go and make an effort to develop a relationship, it makes the class a lot easier because they give you a lot more help. And I think it also just helps you establish more connection and put the time aside to do better in the class and give it a little bit more attention.
I'm gonna re-emphasize Ronan's point of professors. I think a lot of people at Mines like underestimate how much the professors are willing to go out of their way to help you as students. Like for example, office hours, like he was talking about, are a great way. But even just emailing a professor or talking to them, like right as class starts or ends, and like trying to put together like a outside of typical hours session with them, they're more than willing to like try and accommodate you in their schedule, go over, maybe some personalized homework problems or go over like generic study tips and everything like that. They professors are really a great resource in Minds. And then in addition to that, I also want to shout out the Career Center. I've definitely used them my fair share, especially around career fair times. They do mock interviews, they do resume reviews, and they have like op they have open drop-in office hours, so you can just go any time of the day, like any day of the week. And they also do career planning. So as you get towards more your upperclassmen years, you can do career planning with them to kind of figure out what you want to do with your degree, where you want to go with that. It's the career centers, and they're also friendly faces. It's a really great resource.
A couple things came to mind for me. The first was the health center. I remember the first time I got sick, I was a little bit concerned that I wouldn't be able to get a doctor's appointment or like start a new doctor because I'm from out of state. But the health center was super easy to just call and make an appointment. There's also access to telehealth care 24/7 that the health center offers, which is really fantastic. So I was able to get some help on the weekends when I wasn't feeling well. And then another one that I think is also really underrated is the library. Both in person, the librarians are fantastic sources of knowledge and great for being able to look up different things or find certain resources, as well as the online library database. I've been able to find a lot of open source textbooks through the library database so that I haven't had to pay for my own copies myself, because textbooks do add up pretty quickly, as well as just like access to different scientific articles and papers that I found to be really helpful.
Real quick, I just wanted to emphasize something that I found really helpful, especially in such a difficult community, is something not difficult, like difficult course load, is that a lot of your peers are actually people who are going through the same thing and might know something you don't, or you might know something that they don't. And so, something that's really important is trying to reach out to other people in your classes, developing like study groups. Working with friends. I almost never study alone. And so a lot of the people on campus are going through the same thing that you're going through and are taking the same classes. And so a lot of the times they can be the best resource.
Yeah, those are all great. Thanks for sharing. All right, our next one is, and I'm seeing some questions in chat about this already, so I think getting to some of this, but if you all could talk a little bit about how you all got involved in campus, or on campus, and what kind of things you've gotten involved in here at Minds.
Yeah, I'm happy to kick this one off. I originally, because I was more on the introverted side, I wasn't super involved, and so that was a more difficult thing for me to do. But I knew that I wanted to try different things and just kind of experience all the different things that Minds has to offer. So one of the things that I really relied on was going with different friends because to me that like lowered the barrier of entry to just kind of the nervousness that I was feeling. So I'd go with different friends and we just try different things that sounded interesting to us, and see kind of what stuck and what didn't. So like I went with one of my friends to the art club, and I've really enjoyed that, as well as like a biology focused one that I've really enjoyed. So yeah, a little bit of trial and error and going with people that you know and just having some fun with it. I also want to emphasize that it's not too late at all to start getting involved in campus or to change what you're involved in. Some of my like most favorite moments have been kind of just this past school year getting involved in different offices and programs on campus, not just in my, first 2 weeks of school. So.
For me, I got involved in a lot of different ways. The first year I was on campus, I got really involved in like a lot of clubs. I think something I found overwhelming was the amount of opportunities that we have in college. I like trying a bunch of different things. And so I actually found that I was doing too much and it made it harder to like become friends with people. So I found a couple clubs that I was really interested in. There is like one called the Brain Exercise Initiative where we went to like a retirement home and worked with people who are struggling with Alzheimer's to do like brain exercises. They were kind of simple, just talk to them, hang out, and that's something I found really fulfilling. I met a lot of really cool people through that, people who are interested in like the career path that I wanted to go to. I also, in talking to a lot of professors, there's like the Labriola Innovation Hub that opened up, and one of the professors pushed me to get a job there, and I met a lot of really cool people there working as a technical assistant. So I got involved with that, and then the peer mentor program was also a really great experience. I love the community. So I just looked for whatever opportunity I could. Whenever anybody mentioned anything, I just made sure to like write it down or check it out, look it up, and make sure to at least go to an event and check and branch out as much as I could.
Yeah, I would say that I didn't come into Minds with any idea of what I wanted to be involved in. I found that Celebration of Minds was a great opportunity for me to see everything that Minds even had to offer because I really hadn't looked into it. And so that gave me a good opportunity to like get that initial view of everything and also get to kind of know what each of those clubs did, which then did lead to me. I got involved in Greek life and then also the jobs on campus, I think is a great way to also get involved. You meet some amazing people just through that, again through the peer mentor program, and also even just being a TA for different classes is a great way to meet upperclassmen and underclassmen as well. And then recently this past semester I got more involved in my major's professional Society, which has been really great. I got to be on the board for that this upcoming school year, and I'm super excited about it. So just kind of looking at all the opportunities was the best way for me to figure out how to get involved.
Yeah, just to elaborate on something Lexi brought up, Celebration of Minds is it's a giant club fair that happens the weekend of the first week of classes, and your students will be like reminded of it plenty, like all across campus. But basically, every single club or student organization on campus sets up a booth on one of the intramural fields. And so you literally just walk up and down like a street fair, just checking out every club, meeting some of the members. They'll usually have merch or games or some kind of demonstration going on. And it's a really great way to rapid fire just figure out like what Minds has in general. And almost every club has some kind of like QR code you can scan to like join their group me or like a little pamphlet that like tells you about them and like when and where their meeting times are. So that way, it can be really overwhelming up front, but you have time to digest it and figure out what you want to try and prioritize. And I know that was really helpful for me because it kind of helped me figure out that I see like getting involved on campus kind of fell into two different categories for me. For like my fun and enjoyment and like my social activities. I also got involved in Greek life, but then I also do intramural sports and just like country swing dance club and things like that, where I can just relax, de-stress, and have fun with people, meet new people, and see some friends. And then I also have more professional development, career development focused clubs, such as the American Institute of Chemical Engineers chapter at Mines, which is our professional society, as well as getting more involved in student leadership with the lead peer mentor and the peer mentor role within the Nest office. So there's plenty of opportunities at Mines, depending on what you want your focus to be, where you want to have an outlet, and where you want to kind of work on and improve yourself.
Yeah, I think those are all great examples. And just so everybody's aware, this year, Celebration of Minds is going to be Thursday, August 28th. So again, that first Thursday of classes, and that's going to be from 5 to 7 o'clock. Students will get plenty of reminders about that leading up to that, but just note that this year that will be on, again, that Thursday, August 28th. But a great opportunity there as well. All right. So obviously, as I mentioned earlier, I know you all, obviously knowing you all as well, I know, you experience challenges sometimes as a Mind student, and that can be a variety of different things, both academic and personal. But if you all ever were struggling at Minds, kind of what was that like, and who did you reach out to for help?
I would say that I've definitely faced struggles both academically and just like personally with homesickness or even just having a hard time in my classes. And in both scenarios, I always found myself reaching out to my friends, my roommates. They always just kind of knew what I was going through because they were experiencing the same thing. And so they were always just great people to lean on. They always knew what to say and were always there to help no matter what. They could also, when they didn't really know, they would help me find somebody that would. And so they were definitely my biggest support system during my first year here at Mines.
For me, I actually think that my first year, I did a really bad job of reaching out to people for help. I think a pretty normal experience is that in high school, a lot of the students at the school are very used to doing well and knowing how to do things. And then the minute they get to this school, they get overwhelmed. And are, I mean, for me anyway, I felt like I was used to like burdening all of that and just learning how to figure it out. And so it actually was really stressful and oftentimes like very all-encompassing. And so something that I've really worked on, especially in like my second year of school and recently, is learning how to ask for help from friends, teachers. Sending emails to people never hurts. Some professors can get annoyed, but most of the time they're really willing to help out and they're very understanding. TAs are very understanding. So just reaching out and asking for help's never going to hurt, especially if you're respectful and you show that you care about like the content. And obviously, friends are a really good resource too. So I just had to learn how to ask.
Yeah, for me, it was a lot of my support system back home. So my family and some close friends who don't go to mines, who aren't in like an engineering or technical background. I found that that was really helpful because it was people who I knew and trusted really well. And so even if they didn't know necessarily what I was talking about or what I was going through, they were able to help with that. And I also think the counseling center on campus is a great resource. If you ever need any support from them, they have plenty of people who are there to help, offer recommendations about mental health services within the community and on campus, and just finding different ways to make sure that you're taking care of yourself, both physically and mentally.
I would say for me, I definitely struggled both academically and in my personal life, and I found that more often than not, they kind of coincide with each other at the same time. You know, I'd hit some issues in my personal life, and then while that was going on, my academic performance would start to tank. So I kind of had to figure out how to fix both at the same time. And the best way I found to do that was just by reaching out to my friends here at Mines and then also my parents. My parents were a very big support system for me in terms of, helping reassure me, helping me make sure, things were going to be okay and everything like that. And then especially my friends here at Mines and my roommates my first year, it was really nice to have those people here like with me physically who could like, relate to what I was going through, who I could help them in return, and just who we could like share that connection with and help each other out. Like I remember several times during my first year, there'd just be some nights where it just felt pretty heavy. And I just go into my roommates, I'd just go talk to my roommates and we'd all share what was going on with each other because more often than not we were all dealing with something. And we just, share and it just felt like a lighter load once we were all there to help each other out. So even if it's not your roommate, just having someone at Mines and just being vulnerable with them can be a really reassuring experience.
Awesome. Thanks, y'all. All right. I believe this is either the final question that we have pre-prepared or maybe second to last, but I feel like this is a really big one, and one that I think is really important, especially for our families and supporters on the call today. So what do you all think is the most important thing that families and support systems should know about being a Mind student?
I can start with this one. I think something that Minds is working really hard to push back against, but something that still remains at Minds and other institutions, is the concept of imposter syndrome. So feeling like you don't belong, at Minds or in a given community. And I think that's been especially poignant for almost every Minds student that I've talked to, that at some point or another, they experience that imposter syndrome of not feeling like they're right at Minds or something like that. Um, and I've found that those difficult times kind of come in waves. And so from a family or support system perspective, just knowing that there are going to be times where, mines might be a fantastic experience and going really well, and other times where it's not going so well for one reason or another. But that eventually you'll hit one of those up waves again, and things will start to be better. And as you continue and your time at Mines, um, things become not necessarily easier, but easier to navigate, and you gain more skills, and you're able to kind of find the things that work for you, at least in my experience. And that has been kind of that would be my biggest takeaway, I think.
I think to build off of what Liam was saying, it's really easy at the school to get really bogged down and get negative about the experience, especially when all of your classes are hard and everybody around you seems to be struggling. It's hard not to get bogged down by grades that you're not used to getting. So something that is really big is learning how to be positive about it, be okay with the fact that you're not going to perform at the highest level all the time, learning to be okay with grades that you're not used to and learn that that doesn't mean that you don't belong or that you're not doing well. Oftentimes, a lot of people say that they're doing poorly because they're comparing themselves. And so, one of the biggest things is learning not to compare yourself to people around you, but rather just focus on your own experience, focus on helping yourself, and learning to find things that you're excited about on campus or find your own personal wins. It doesn't have to be that you ace every test. It can be that you feel like you learned a concept. And so helping something for mind students students is getting is it's hard not to get bogged down. So as a parent or as a family member or supporter, helping them kind of stay out of their head and encourage them, trying not to focus on their grades or their scores and rather focusing on like other achievements and helping them feel excited about the opportunities that they have as a student at Mines is something that's really beneficial.
Yeah, I would say building off of what both of Liam and Ronan said is that I don't know any student here who hasn't struggled in one way or another, whether that's even just a tiny struggle, but that's okay and that is something that everyone experiences at one point or another. I personally have failed multiple exams here and can definitely get in my head a lot about that. But there are so many resources on campus, and I think that was what was hard for me was I wasn't used to having to ask for help, but really using those resources you have, it is 100% possible to be successful here at Mines. Um, I don't do well here as I did in high school, but I am still incredibly proud of the student that I am because there is so many more aspects that go into my school experience other than just my academics. And so I think finding that balance and just knowing when to reach out to resources and supporting your student through all of that is something really important to know.
Yeah, kind of bouncing off of that, I think for me personally, the biggest support I received from my parents and my support system was just knowing that they had my back. There were times where like Lexi said, like I've definitely failed several tests. I've had academic slumps or just, slumps where I'm just not feeling that great. But knowing that my parents like had my back and I could always count on them for support was really, really helpful. Even of course, it wasn't just always like that, in terms of, if I like skipped a class or something like that, or if I did, start slipping in my academic performance, they'd go, hey, like what's going on? They'd inquire and be like, and kind of encourage me to do better. But they did it in a way where it didn't feel like a threat or like a force. It felt like they genuinely they wanted to see me succeed. And having that support behind me, like helped me feel like I could do anything. It helped me feel like I could be the most successful version of myself here at Mines.
And then just one more thing to throw in that I've been thinking about too. My family was very good at encouraging me to kind of find I don't want to say the work-life balance, but just finding time to step away from school, whether that just be going on a walk outside, because I'd often like wind myself up and get super stressed out over something rather menial. And so if I just took a little bit of time away, and refocused myself, I found that to be very helpful and very comforting from a support perspective.
Awesome. Thanks, y'all. And yeah, speaking to kind of some of what you all talked about, knowing some of those common issues that mine students especially face coming in for their first year, whether that is, not doing as well as they'd like to on a test or, struggling with making friends or getting involved, things like that. A really important resource for you all, families and supporters, is going to be one of our later welcome webinars. So we actually are going to do a webinar specifically for families and supporters that is all about supporting your student. And that one will be hosted by our um, assistant vice presidents of student life in our student life division. And they will talk through kind of some of those scenarios that come up pretty frequently year to year, and we'll kind of give you some space to kind of think through how you might respond to those. So I would definitely recommend, if you haven't already, registering for that as part of this welcome webinar series. And that one's going to be Wednesday, July 23rd at 5 p.m. And I'll remind you about that again here at the end. But just wanted to put that plug out there as well, because I know that's always a really helpful session to think through some of this as well. All right, those are all of our pre-prepared questions. So I'm going to start making my way down the list of our questions that we have had submitted. So I'm going to try to get to everybody, but there are some that are very similar. So we're going to bundle kind of some together to make sure we get these all answered for you. So I'm going to start off with one that I know we get asked every year. And so I'm going to ask it and kind of combine a couple of different questions, but it's specifically about living in residence halls. So was there something that you brought to minds that you didn't need, or something that you didn't bring that you wish you would have, and slash the most useful thing that you brought home from home for your residence hall room? So anywhere in that kind of realm, I'll let you all kind of put some thoughts in.
I would say something that's like really simple that I did not bring that I wish I had was a stool, like a step stool. I lived in Maple Hall my first year, and the closet had like a shelf and it was pretty high up, and it also had like other little shelves over by the sink that were also pretty high, and I couldn't reach them. So not like a super like big thing, but I had to go buy one the very first day I was there and used it the entire year, and I still use it even now.
Something that is a little less like useful utility wise, but something that I found was really good for building like friendships with people was that I brought my guitars or one of my guitars. And a lot of people on my floor just randomly happen to play guitar or want to sing or things like that. And so, like, if they heard me playing guitar or if I heard them playing guitar, I could go talk to them about that. So, things like that were actually really cool for building community. I also know that people on my floor brought their like video game systems, whether that's a Switch or not, and they'd set it up in like the common areas and people would just come and watch and hang out and play together. So, anything like that, being a musician is kind of like a cool way to build a relationship if that's something that you do. And so I found that that was really useful for meeting people.
Um, I have a very specific one, but I think it was actually pretty useful. I brought with me a collapsible laundry basket so that it could like smush completely flat, and that was fantastic because my room, the bed was a little bit lower, and so just with the way everything was organized, there wasn't really a good place for it to go. So I would be able to like smush it down a little bit so that it could fit under the bed, so that I wouldn't have just a laundry basket in the middle of the room. And that one was definitely a good bring. And then another thing was just like a little memento from home. I have like a little like glass jar that my family really likes. And I brought that with me because it was just a nice reminder of like home and like why I'm at mines and things like that. So definitely some kind of little personal memento or thing of significance to you, I think is super important as well.
Yeah, I would definitely emphasize, bringing something that means something to you personally, whether it's like a poster or two, or maybe some little desk ornaments. Just because it is really nice to have something that can make your room feel like home, especially when you're first starting out. And it'll get added on to more and more as you continue on with your first year. But having something initially that just, what helps you feel at home here can be a really huge piece. And then something else I'd say when kind of, I guess it's more just like a general tip that I thought of whenever I was packing for mines was if I don't use it now in my everyday life, I wouldn't bring, I didn't bring it to mines. Um, that was just kind of like my philosophy I had. And then if I got to mines and I ended up did needing it, it's super simple to Amazon it or walk down to uh, the Safeway or find a way to get to Walmart or something like that or Target just in case. But that way you're not overpacking.
Awesome. All right. Let's see. I'm going to stick on kind of just this housing one really quickly. We're going to answer one more in this area. But if like maybe two of you could just give a quick overview of whether you knew your roommates, did you like them? Were they friends from high school? Did you do random, either in the portal? And also kind of in that same vein, like what helped you in adjusting to sharing a room?
I can start us off. I did not know my roommate before coming to Mines. I met her through the roommate portal, and it was a really great experience. We're still great friends. We still live together today. I would say that we definitely had very different, or not super different, but different parts of like our living situation, different sleep schedules, things like that. And one thing that I definitely had to learn throughout that time is like just learning to be okay with having those conversations about like what you need and what you want. So my roommate could stay up until like 2 a.m. and I was just not that person. So I had a conversation with her a few times about can we turn the lights off earlier and just kind of I was really uncomfortable with it at first, but just learning to be comfortable with having those conversations so that you can continue to have that good relationship.
Yes, so kind of in a similar vein, I did not know my roommate or my suite mates. I lived in Weaver, so I had a couple of suite mates as well. And I think the biggest part of adjustment for me was like a cleanliness thing, and kind of similar to what Lexi was saying, just having those conversations and um, learning to be honest was super important for me there. I didn't know my roommate, but we ended up getting along really well. He's a good friend of mine. Even though we, had differences in certain ways, we were able to give each other space when we needed it, or like time to talk with one another when we needed as well. So it ended up working out really well for me.
Awesome. All right, so I know the answer to this question, but I know a couple of you. We basically were asked if anybody was in either a fraternity or a sorority, and if so, they could describe a little bit about their experience, and then even underneath that as well, kind of like what Greek life is like generally and what Rush Week is like. So could a couple of you just comment on that real quick?
Yeah, for sure. So I ended up joining a fraternity my first semester here at Mines. And that was just the way I found that I met some like-minded people like myself that were driven. They liked to have a good time here at Mines, and it was just a way to find some more social and outgoing people right off the bat. I saw a lot of camp counselors who I saw at Order Your Camp that I had already started looking up to, and so they happened to be members of the fraternity I joined. And during Rush Week, rushes for fraternities. I'll let Lexi touch on sorority recruitment and that side of things. But Rush Week, you did get a chance, and I highly recommend talk to every single house, talk to every single person you can in every single house. Just because there's so many different people in each fraternity, you're gonna find a lot of people you'll like everywhere, and so it's a very low stress way to make a lot of connections with people of your own class, people of upper classes, and I'm still friends with a lot of people of different years who are both in my fraternity and in other fraternities, or who ended up not joining any at all. And so for me, it just gave me that space where I could meet people who like to be more outgoing and more extroverted and just, be active in doing things.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Dom on a lot of that, that the experience has been really great for me. It was more of a way for me to just meet people. I would say I was definitely more of a shy person coming into mines. And so sorority recruitment really just gave me kind of that gateway to meeting so many different people because you get to talk to so many different people. And it was an amazing experience. You get to talk to all the houses when you go through recruitment. And I really love where I ended up. I love the academic help that I get with like upperclassmen being able to help me through my classes and tutor me when needed. And I also just love the social events. It's a great way to just kind of stay involved throughout the semester and throughout the year, whether that's through like volunteering or even just getting to hang out with each other. I would say it was an amazing experience.
And something else I do want to add on real quick is even if like being like extra like being Greek life in Greek life, like Greek life is not the only extroverted people on campus or the only social people on campus. Lots of people throughout the Minds community like to make friends, like to make connections, and like to have a good time with friends. That's not limited to Greek life. There are tons of other clubs or just people or like not even clubs and just friend groups out there. So for some people, Greek life may be that outlet, but don't worry if it's not your thing. There's tons of other places you can find what you're looking for.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to switch gears a little bit here into talking a little bit more kind of about like class load, studying, tutoring, that kind of side of things. Um, so again, I'm going to kind of combine two here. Well, no, I'm not. I lied. Okay, so for our first one, we're going to talk about if you all can kind of just quickly chat about what the typical like week looks like for you, which obviously, it's a little different depending on what's going on. But in terms of how many hours like you all spend in class, and studying per week, and then how much typically is left for kind of like clubs and socializing and doing other things as well.
I can go ahead and talk about this one. For course load, it's a lot if you get behind. It can take up a lot of time. I think that classes generally took up less time than time I spent studying. But something that I found really useful was figuring out like a schedule and time management. So I actually like centralized every that's the right word, I think. I put everything into the Outlook calendar where I got emails from school. I also like put all my classes on there, and then I used the tasks like bar to write down everything that I had to do. And I treat every day kind of like a work day where like as soon as I woke up, I would schedule my classes early. I'd go to class, and then I'd spend any time I had in the middle of the day studying, going and finding some place on campus to sit down and do homework, planning out when I was going to achieve it, and then having a time at the end of the day that I was done. And generally, if I set aside that time that was like just time to work, I could have time after that to go and have fun, hang out with people, play video games, things like that, do clubs. So just being very intentional with your time is really important. But if you are and you plan it out well and you use your resources like office hours and stuff and don't just sit with computer code for 11 hours, generally it's very doable. And it's easy to balance if you yeah, with good time management.
Yeah, I would say for me, typical class load is, I mean, you can take normally between 12 to 18 credit hours. For your first semester, because mines will make your schedule, you'll typically hover around the 15, 16 credit hour range, which can be a lot, but it's also manageable. And your academic advisor can help you like work through that. Um, but most classes are typically meet either 3 times a week for 1 hour on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or twice a week for an hour and a half on Tuesday, Thursday. So I've had anywhere from, either like I've had one class a day, I've also had four classes a day, just depending on how your schedule lines up. And typically, my classes have always been between, 9 a.m. and around 3 p.m. I try to keep it centralized so that way I can have my mornings a little slower, and then also I can have the evenings. What Ronan was talking about being very intentional with your time, I think is really huge, because you are going to have free time. Like classes and studying will obviously take up a good chunk of time, but it won't take up all of your time. And you can really get the most out of that free time if you're more intentional about when you're going to study rather than just leaving it to, oh, I guess I have time right now. So I myself like to take a few hours off in the middle of the day for lunch just to go outside, hang out with friends, and eat lunch. And then, in doing so, I'll usually have a few hours of work to do in the evenings. But I know people like Ronan who treat it like a 9 to 5 and just start in the morning and then they finish and then they have, their afternoon and evening completely free. It's usually just up to you, depending on like what you think works best for you, what you get the most enjoyment out of. But I'd say there's definitely plenty of time for you to have your extracurriculars and just have time for your hobbies, to go to the gym or work out or whatever you want to do, or just to have time to yourself.
Yeah, I would say
Oh,
very
sorry,
similar
Liam.
things.
Can I just add one quick thing in here that maybe you can speak to as well?
Sure.
Kind of a sub question of this is like, what kind of class loads have you all taken, and kind of like how you strike the right balance there? If you could just touch on that piece too for me.
Sure, yeah. I think something that's super big is balancing, like for me, lab classes versus just pure lecture classes was something. So not having too many labs in one semester, just typically because those labs physically take up more time in the day. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a more challenging class than a non-lab class, but just because it takes up more hours. If you spend too many hours on campus, it just feels a little bit more overwhelming than it actually is. So yeah, my second semester, I decided to take like a slightly higher course load. I think I was at 19 credit hours. And that wasn't a good decision for me. I had to kind of pull back from that. I was in two lab classes, so a couple of general education classes like within the core curriculum, and then a major specific class. And while it was all super interesting and fun, it was just it was not, I was not doing well in any of my classes because I had spread myself too thin. And so as a result, I wasn't able to balance very well all the other things that I wanted to do, like have time for myself, stay involved in things like that. Um, so I think it's just about trying to, you know, pick where you can find the schedule that works for you. Something that I've found kind of as I've progressed more is I do treat my days like a 9 to 5. So even if I don't necessarily start at 9 a.m., I will try and stay on campus for like a good 7 or 8 hour chunk, like I would a job. And that allows me time in the evenings and on the weekends to like I have an off-campus job. And so I'm able to balance all of those things because like we've been talking about being very intentional with your time. I know a big culprit for me my first semester was if I had a block in the middle of the day in between classes, I would go back to my dorm room and take a nap. And that was a disastrous move because then I wouldn't sleep at night and I just felt lazy and sluggish in the evenings. That's just a personal thing. If that's what you need to do, by all means, go for it. But that's just kind of how I stayed on top of my course load.
Yeah, I would say that I've had a variety of course loads. I've had semesters of 13 credit hours, some of 15, and then also some of 17. I would say that I've never had a semester where I didn't have time to be involved in anything else. And I've never had a semester where I had to like break my sleep schedule to keep up with coursework. So again, I definitely think it's a lot to do with time management, but I have never had between like 13 and 17 credit hours. Definitely there is a difference in the free time that you do have, but I've had free time with all of it to be able to still do all the things that I love outside of class.
And then one last thing really quick that I just want to chime in on is uh something that's been important for me is the development, both personally and professionally, that goes on outside of the classroom. So there have been semesters where I could have taken, maybe 18 or more credit hours, um, and and just done schoolwork, but having the opportunity to take 15 or even lower credit hour semesters gives you the time to get involved in student leadership and professional societies and things like that, where you can kind of develop your professional skills and your career skills that you just won't get directly from the classroom. So it's an important balance you have to kind of find, and you get more flexibility with that as you, uh, you know, uh, go up in academic year. But it's just something I would keep in mind.
All right, I'm gonna put us kind of, I know we're coming up on our 10-minute mark. We still have a couple questions to get to, so I'm gonna put us kind of into rapid fire mode. So if I could just get like one or two of you to speak real quick on each of these, that would be really helpful. So I'm gonna start with one about how you all became better organized. Like, do you feel like school helped you become better organized? Did you kind of do that yourself? And maybe some of y'all can also, obviously, I know you all are peer mentors, so you can touch a little bit maybe on some of the stuff we talk about in CSM 101 as well.
Yeah, I would say it was kind of a trial by fire getting good at organization. I wasn't the most organized person coming into mines, and I definitely still have some work to do. But just having college classes shift from high school, in high school, it's all your schedule is planned out for you day after day after day. It's a lot of monotony. But in college, there's always something new every day. There's different homework assignment schedules, different tests scheduled. So for me, I having like Outlook calendar or Google Calendar became great because on Google Calendar, I'd throw in all of my classes, I'd throw in all of my office hours, and I'd throw in my tests so I could see like when I need to start ramping up my studying as the test approaches a week or two out. And then also the Canvas taskbar, I would physically write out all of my tasks that I had to do based on like what day they were due and like kind of try to prioritize what I should do when, and I would just work my way down the list, and that worked for me.
I'll chime in like a slightly different perspective. I think also staying physically organized is super big. For me, I know that like when my room is super messy, I can't think straight, and so I have to take a moment to just like step back and just tidy or clean for a couple of minutes, and that really helps me like have a clearer mind and be able to tackle things.
Awesome. All right. Maybe just one of you for this. And I know actually, Liam, you've talked a little bit about this. I don't know if this necessarily applies to your first year, so if not, totally cool. But did any of you all work during your first year at Mines? And if so, was it on campus or off? And what did that look like in terms of juggling that with your like classes and everything with your work schedule?
Yeah, so I did not work during my first year. I started my fall semester of my sophomore year, but I still have that job, and thankfully, I've been very open and honest with my managers about kind of my needs and like being able to schedule things really far out. So if I know I have a lot of exams coming up, being sure to request certain things off, and just being firm about boundaries about what I am and am not able to do in terms of a time commitment. Some weeks are better than others, and so just being open and honest about that has been super helpful for me. Typically, my work is on the weekends, so that's just how I choose to spend my time. But sometimes I do work like during the evenings of the school day.
There are also a lot of on-campus jobs you can hold. Like I held one over the summer last summer at the rec center. Like every office and every building has a front desk or a need for some kind of aid. And there's a job portal in Trailhead where you can kind of see what jobs are available and apply. And they're really easy, low stress, and they're a good way to kind of make some money while you do your schoolwork.
Jobs on campus are also generally very understanding that you're a student first and that you have a lot of obligations. So they're generally very much more flexible than a job outside of campus. I had a job on campus my first year at the 3D printing lab, and they were always very, very understanding if I had a test or something like that that came first. So it worked for me.
Perfect. All right. Let's see. Just taking a look at what we still have. Can anybody talk about just maybe one of you really quick? If you all have any experience doing either like peer tutoring or CASA tutoring, kind of what that experience was like. Anyone?
I've had a little bit of experience with Casa tutoring, particularly in help with like programming stuff, just because it didn't come very intuitively at first. And I think the tutors were super helpful. Sometimes it's professors, sometimes it's TAs for the course, or just students who've done really well. And I found that like repeatedly going to those kind of office hours and building those connections has been super helpful because then you get a little bit more of like a personalized help through some of the situations that you're going through. So I would definitely recommend Casa tutoring.
Awesome. All right. For this one, talking about like majors. So how do you all, I'm gonna kind of combine two questions here. One, obviously, students are kind of choosing their major as they come in as a high school student. So how do you validate if your major is right for you before it's too late? And then with that, also thinking about kind of with minors, like thinking about like determining how do you determine like what credits and classes you need if you have a minor in addition to your major.
Yeah, I can touch on the major aspect of it real quick. I'll leave the minor stuff to the people who have them. But I actually changed my major when I came into mines. I did come in as chemistry, and then I switched to chemical engineering, which not a big shift, but it was still a change. Um, Whenever you come in for your first 2 semesters, your entire first year, you're taking a lot of gen ed classes, like physics, your calcs, your beginning English classes that are required for all majors. So you have a lot of time to kind of figure out if you like what you think you want to do. And even then, like, once you start doing major specifics, the intros can still apply to different majors. In terms of figuring out what you want, doing research on your own is great, but also asking your peer mentors to connect you with upperclassmen in those majors was super helpful for me in terms of figuring out like what a chemical engineer like actually does and what they like actually learn in their classes. So using the connections you have on campus is really great for that.
I will say that it's not really ever too late. It does get harder to switch, but you can still switch. I actually, my first year came in as a mechanical aerospace engineer, and now I'm doing quantitative biosciences and engineering. So I went like way across the spectrum in terms of like what classes I was taking. And I'm not behind. I'm actually still ahead, and I didn't switch until my sophomore year of college. What I found was really helpful in determining what I wanted to do was talking to a lot of upperclassmen, asking questions about what classes they liked and why, what content they were learning, looking at the class catalogs to see what classes there were and see what interested me personally, and then thinking also in terms of what my like work life, what I wanted my work life to look like talking to professionals if I could, talking to people who had graduated, or like just literally anybody who is willing to talk about the experience in that field, at career days, anything like that was really influential to me because I realized what kind of work I wanted to be doing in the future and was able to kind of come up with a path for that. So I think finding a good balance of what career you want to pursue and also what classes you find actually exciting to take, is really important. And that can all just come from asking a lot of questions. I would talk to literally everybody all the time about what they were doing and why they liked it. So it's never too late, and just keeping an open mind is really important.
Awesome. One really quick, if one of you could just touch on this, and then I want to make sure that each of you can answer kind of our final question. But for those of you who have had an internship, can you talk about how easy that was to find that, kind of what that experience was like? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so I'm actually at my internship right now for the summer with Chevron Phillips Chemical. Uh, for me, I found that it was very difficult to get it to feel confident in myself and get an internship until this past year as a junior, just because it felt like I didn't have the technical experience necessary to get one my sophomore year and especially my first year. But I wouldn't let that stop you. There are a lot of companies who are still more than willing to teach you because that's what I found is this internship is they don't expect me they expect me to know the basics of what I've learned in class, but I have so many questions that seem like so simple in hindsight, but they're still so encouraging to get them or for me to ask them. So it feels like a almost like another class where I'm doing work obviously. It's more high stakes than just what you do in class, but there's a lot of learning going on where they're actively encouraging it like a classroom. And for me, I got it through career fair. So going to career fair, as scary as it can be, and just talking to anyone and everyone in every company because you never know where your next opportunity is going to be found. And just being able to, like, what you may not have in technical skills, you can make up for in personal skills and being able to talk to people and like forge connections. So yeah, I would highly recommend career fair for that.
Awesome. All right. If we can really quickly, I'm gonna have you all try to answer this quick because I know we're coming up on time. But I would love for each of you to kind of answer this for me, and then we'll have just some helpful reminders before we wrap up. But I want to end with this question because I really like this one. Can you all just tell us if you just sort of pick one thing, like what do you love about being a Mind student?
I can start us off. I just love the community here and like just the such a wide variety of things that you can get involved in, and just getting to see that everyone is more than just the major that they are. We have like theater and music and arts and just so many different things that you can be involved in. And I think that's my favorite part is just getting to see the variety of things that you can be as a student here.
I think for me, I think my favorite thing about Mines is the person I am when I'm here at Mines. I genuinely feel like I can be myself here. I feel so loved and respected and connected to my friends and the campus in general and the community at large. Mines is a very special place where there's a lot of like-minded people who are trying to get the most out of life while they're here. And it's just a genuinely very unique space. I truly think of Mines as my second home. And it didn't start out that way for me, but it quickly became that just because I've just never felt a place that's so, so welcoming where I can truly be as happy as I currently am. It's I love it here.
I would say for me, probably school pride is a big one. Kind of like a community sort of thing, but just recognizing a lot of the shared experiences that we go through and being able to connect through those, even though we might have very different trajectories of what we're actually doing. Some of those like core traditions and really hold us together as a school, and like having those values of helping one another, being there to support one another is really central to Minds. And so it makes me feel very proud to be part of the Minds community.
I love mines for a lot of reasons. I love the amount of opportunity here. I feel like I'm always learning new things and finding really cool things to do. There's a lot of awesome communities with people who are really, really interesting. I feel like everybody I talk to is some of the smartest person I've ever met whenever I talk to them, and they all have really cool niche interests, and a lot of people are very excited to talk to you about what they're interested in, and I love that because I love learning new things, and I have a lot of things that I'm really interested in and love to talk about a lot. So it's like fun to talk to people who are into that, who are kind of into the whole realm of like everybody's so excited about what they're pursuing for the most part. Like you'll talk to people and they love their work and they love to talk to you about it and they love their degree or they love what they're learning in class. And I just find that really exciting and honestly helps me feel more encouraged because I feel like everybody around me being excited keeps me excited and elevated. So I just love the people and the community and like the really unique experience of being in a community that is strictly all kind of having the same unique experience.
Awesome. Well, students, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And really quickly, families, I got a couple just reminders for you all. So again, please feel free to join us for the rest of our welcome webinars throughout the summer. Again, we have another one that is specifically just for families later in July. But our next one is going to be all about paying for college. So obviously a really big one there with financial aid in the bursar's office. And that is going to be Tuesday, July 8th at 5 p.m. Also, if your student hasn't already, they should have received an email from one of our lead peer mentors about the summer engagement series. But essentially, those are small peer discussions that we're holding throughout the summer, are a great chance for students to meet other incoming students, get some of their questions answered, and chat with one of our lovely lead peer mentors before they start their time at Minds. So if they haven't already, definitely recommend signing up for those. That information is on our website as well. And then make sure that your student is completing their Ordinary Next Steps checklist in the admissions portal. A really big one here, the Hell of a Welcome information form is under the enrollment checklist section. That was due to us technically last Friday, but it looks like we've got about 100 or so that are still outstanding. So if you could just remind your student, if they haven't already done that, to make sure they fill out that form. We need that information to give them the best orientation experience possible. And then again, just make sure that they're checking their Minds email throughout the summer as more information will come from us and Residence Life and other great campus partners. So with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. But thank you again to our students for being here and for all of you for joining us. And we hope to see you later this summer at one of our other welcome webinars. Thanks, everybody.